Hello, my name is Joel McLeod,
I'm Roland Tanner.
and welcome to the 905er Roundup on a Tuesday. Yes, it's still a Tuesday, folks. Don't think you missed a few days on the calendar there. We're just doing things a bit backward this week. But partly because what a weekend. I mean, that was one hell of a weekend in terms of provincial news coming out on a Friday. The theory used to go, you release your news on Friday so that it gets buried in the news feed and you don't have to deal with it, but not the case this weekend. There are only two stories that we're really talking about this episode, folks. One is a party and the other is a resignation. I'm assuming you already know what we're talking about, but we're going to start with what we think is the biggest and the absolutely most important of the two, and that is Doug Ford's daughter's Stag and Doe hoopla, which, in my opinion, the more details about that story come out, the more it looks like the opening scene of The Godfather, with people of requesting favors of Don Corleone, in this case Doug Ford, at the day of my daughter's wedding. I cannot refuse a request kind of scenario. It's what it's looking to get into. Like, Roland, I'm going to make you play devil's advocate here. Is there anything about this that I'm possibly not reading as the absolute possibly worst political scandal in Ontario history?
Worst in Ontario history. I'm trying to think back.
I'm going to say that this is worse than like anything. I know people say, well, what about Wynne and what about McGuinty? It's like, this is far worse than anything that they did.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Even if you accept the opposition arguments about the Wynne and McGuinty stuff, which for the record I don't, but I will put my hand up and say bias. But I could go on for hours about why I don't accept that. But even if you accepted that, there was nothing like developers lining up to give checks to the Premier's daughter at a Stag and Doe party, and then also attending the following wedding. Some of whom, one in particular, Mario Cortellucci. So Mario Cortellucci, let's just remind ourselves about Mario Cortellucci, because his name crops up again and again and again in recent months. Mario Cortellucci ran for a Senate seat in Italy. It's a Senate seat specifically reserved for Italians who live overseas, but Italians nonetheless, with Italian citizenship. I mean, that's fine. I don't, particularly don't have any issue with that.
We don't cover foreign countries' politics on the 905er.
No, until they become relevant when someone's standing for the far right coalition of parties, including Silvio Berlusconi and the Maloney and other odious creeps who are bordering on fascist, running on a platform of extradition to immigrants, of closing down thousands of mosques, and of persecuting Italy's Roma people. This is the coalition that Mr. Cortellucci ran for. He's also recently been appointed, purely by coincidence, I'm sure, to the Police Services Board of New York region. And he's also one of the province's biggest developers, who's standing to benefit from the attacks on the Greenbelt. I mean, maybe we should just start calling him Premier Cortellucci and have done with it. I don't know. Well, these people crop up everywhere, and it absolutely stinks.
There comes a point where, like, I'm looking at this and saying, how you and I, Joe Blow, Ontarian, regular citizen, not looking to say, like, our country, our province is being run by, it looks like the mob. Like, this, like, everything about this just looks like, again, it looks like the opening scene of The Godfather, right? There's the party, and
just for the sake of legal argument, we should say that's a metaphor and not an actual accusation.
It's not actually, but I mean, you could put the footage side by side. It's a little hard to know what's what. And the fact that you how the I mean, we know that the developers themselves, the people who are kind of pressured to come into this, they even themselves said this doesn't feel right. Like I'm feeling pressured to attend these to attend this thing. I don't really want to, but I'm being told kind of like, hey man, you got to put up or shut up. And it's what it gets me is like our integrity commissioner says, oh no, it's okay because they're all good friends of Doug Ford, because Doug Ford says, yeah, I know them all. It's like what is the role of our integrity commissioner? Um, like all these integrity and ethics commissioners and all this, I think it's all I've always said it's bullshit. Like none of it does anything other than just give fuel to conservatives to just go after their enemies.
I mean, the integrity commissioner only has the powers to ask the first question, if you like. So the Doug Ford goes to the integrity commissioner and says, "I just want to check with you. By the way, the fact that he wanted to check makes you why did he want to check? I mean, clearly he thought there might be a problem, right?" So he went to the integrity commissioner and said, "Hey, Bob," or whatever his name is, just want to check this is okay. Integrity commissioner says, "Well, did you talk about business?" No. Did were they there to? Were those donations anything to do with development or anything? No, of course not. Just freely giving gifts of family friends. And the integrity commissioner can't ask for can't pursue evidence, can't do further investigation. The integrity commissioner's job ends at that point. Well, if you say so, then it is so. I mean, that's the extent of his powers. It's kind of pathetic. I heard a rumor. Well, actually, maybe we shouldn't talk about rumors, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to see who else was at that Stag and Doe.
I just think the fact that Doug Ford himself in the question, he gets asked these questions by reporters, and of course he gets all up in arms, like, it's ridiculous. How dare you ask me questions and besmirch my good name, and starts pearl clutching. Yet he himself says, "Oh, so many people. Like he doesn't know everybody face by face, and he can't say everybody who was there and who wasn't." I said, if you don't know who was at this party, then how can you say how they're good friends of yours? They're close personal friends. If you yourself can't say, I didn't know. Like I'm sorry, Roland, but when I invite close personal friends of mine to a party or get together, and make a point to welcome them to the party, and I know that they were there, I talk with them because they're my close personal friends.
Well, and let's talk about, we've both been involved in political fundraisers in the past, back in the days when corporate fundraising was a thing, but both before and after in my case. And I can tell you that, actually, most of the conversations that happen at fundraisers are extremely innocuous and boring. And everyone knows what the deal is. You turn up, you pay your money, you stand in a room, you listen to a 10-minute speech from the minister or whoever, you clap, you shake hands, you leave. It's you eat a few rubber chickens. Everybody knows exactly what the deal is, and that is that your name's on the list of donors that attended the event. I mean, many people would buy the ticket, not come, or buy the ticket, pay for someone else to come.
They send some young staffer to get their face in front of somebody important in the province. But they're dull affairs.
And for the companies who are majorly into lobbying, particularly pharmaceuticals development. Trying to think of what other big ones would there have been. There would have been unions in the past. So there would have been, the Minister of Labour would have been working with unions and stuff. Everybody kind of knew what the deal was. And actually, ironically, the kind of, you're paying for access to the minister thing is kind of massively overblown, because most people are like, I don't need access to the minister. I just need the minister to know that I donated. And believe me, this is exactly the same thing. Like you say, it's the the acolytes at the court of the king giving their
they're tithed to the powers that be. But that's exactly what happened here, is that you don't talk business at the thing, because Lord knows those same people have Doug Ford's personal phone number probably, or they call him up and somebody in his office says, hey, so and so wants to talk with you. Sure, put them through, and they'll talk about development or whatnot, and they can easily set a meeting for the premier's office or the minister's office to have those actual meetings to discuss, hammer out policy and whatnot. They can do that on their own time. But you're right. What this is about is that the King Louis XIV in Versailles did the same thing. You are expected to make your appearance at court and pay your homage to the king, the powers that be, and bend over backwards to show up, which is what this is exactly what it's sounding like, is that these developers, I never thought I'd say that, but I feel bad for the developers saying, like, I don't want to go to this thing. I don't feel comfortable showing up here. I think it's kind of sketchy, but you're kind of being told, excuse me, if you want a seat at the table, you better show up and appear at Doug's daughter's Stag and Doe.
I expect they were only too happy to go. I mean, this is how you buy influence in Ontario.
Yeah.
And it predates this government, but after getting rid of corporate donations, the kind of blatancy and the obviousness of how this is done is kind of astonishing. It beggars belief that anybody would be so flipping stupid. And millionaire Doug Ford, a successful businessman who can't make labels for cars, shaking down his good family friends for $1,000 each a head to pay for his daughter's wedding.
Yeah,
what the hell? I mean, that's
like, as somebody, when I got married many years ago, my wife and I had a Stag and Doe, mostly because, like, she grew up in the country and that was your traditional thing. You kind of have a Stag and Doe, and the idea is to ideally you raise enough money to pay for the cost of the wedding, because weddings are expensive things. I have a hard time buying that Doug Ford's daughter has a hard time paying the cost of that wedding. I'm sorry, I just do. I think, like, what the entire thing is just looks like somebody made the idea of, hey, we can use this as an excuse to get milk a few. I don't even know what the point of it was.
I'm sure the money was. I don't see there's any need to question how the money was spent or what it was for. It's still buying influence. Gifts to the daughter of the premier are many ways much more useful as political donations than an actual donation to some bloody riding association.
Here's my question: What happens to all that money now? Like, do not tell me that Doug Ford, like, that wedding is not being paid for. Like, I want to see the receipts for that wedding. Honestly, now I think that should be public information now. I know we can. I know there's, like, legally that you never get a chance to, but my God, like, what happens to that money? Is that money being funneled into Tory coffers slowly but surely? You're going to see, like, $100,000 donations.
I mean, like, I don't think we need to. That doesn't need to be part of the story for this to be a scandal.
No, you're right.
Yeah. That would turn it from disgraceful and resignation worthy to brown envelopes and just absolute, yes, let's go to prison standards. This is resignation worthy, right, as it is now, with no further information required. Compared with other things we might talk about and question resignation worthy or not, and different people are going to have different opinions about that. But this is resignation worthy right now with no further information.
Brian,
the integrity commissioner, God knows what he's thinking.
In my opinion, the integrity commissioner has undermined the integrity of that office, and he, like nobody's going to believe anything that the integrity commissioner reports now. They've shot themselves in the foot that way. The second point, though, is that I want to make is Brian Mulroney. If you do you remember, maybe this is before you came to Canada, but Brian Mulroney left office exactly because of this. Sacks of money in brown paper bags over the Airbus scandal. And he had the sense of mind to say, okay, I'm walking away. I am out of here. And there's the whole inquiry with into what happened there, which came out that, yeah, he and his cronies were taking sacks full of money under the table over the Airbus scandal. How this Stag and Doe does not equate to that, I do not know. And you're right. If Doug Ford had any sense of integrity himself, he'd be stepping down right now and saying, I cannot, I've lost the power, the moral authority, the good will to run, to govern. This is completely sketchy. And the fact that you had, Rob Taverner there breaking open the wine on the video to toast the lovely groom and bride, and they said there like this. It shows that the entire apparatus of our provincial government is corrupt. They have turned the provincial levers of power into their own personal kleptocracy, and it's disgusting. And I mean, they're not going to resign because they don't have the integrity to do that, but they should.
No. No, the only reason Doug Ford will resign is if people in his own party smell blood and think that this is a way for them to,
I would dare say his ability to carry it the next 4 years, I think, is going to be greatly compromised. Because if I was an up and coming Tory, young Tory MPP, I'd be trying to figure out, okay, how do I keep the pressure on Dougie to kick him out, and I can put somebody I want that's going to advance my cause into power.
I would say in normal circumstances, he should be very compromised. This should be a noose around his neck until the next election.
I was telling you, this reeks of Boris Johnson's COVID parties.
Yeah, difference being that there was some investigation going on there.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, the opposition parties during the whole, going back to the whole gas plant thing, the opposition parties did what opposition parties do, right? Ultimately successfully. It took a long time, but ultimately successfully, which is they just kept the story in the news for getting on for 8 years with constant inquiries, investigations, whatever, with parliamentary committees, with Merritt Styles, where are you? Come on. I haven't heard a peep out of you so far. I mean, I've seen a peep out of a bunch of other MPPs. I have seen diddly squat from Merritt Styles.
I have put in a request to her office to invite her onto the podcast.
Okay, well, let's come on and speak and tell us what you think. I mean, I'm not saying maybe she's, but no, this has to be the leaders of the opposition parties. This is Christmas come early.
Like we're like every liberal wannabe MP leader needs to be foaming at the mouth at the microphone now, just saying.
Has Merritt Styles called for his resignation yet? Because if not, why not? Why not?
I haven't. Like, that's the thing. Like, I haven't heard anybody call for his resignation. There's been no call for a formal investigation. No pressure on the OPP to talk about criminal. Has a criminal conspiracy happened here for wrongdoing? Like, what's gone on here? We don't know. We're taking this at Doug Ford's honorable word, and I use those in quotation marks.
Like, in all honesty, there is enough information here now, when you tie in everything together that we already know about Doug Ford and the developers, about the things that reek around the information given to developers ahead of the announcement on the Greenbelt, about everything to do with development in particular and this government, there is enough now to call for his resignation, in my opinion. Like the facts that are on the table that are not even in dispute are damning in the extreme, as far as I can see.
Well, we're calling for his resignation. I think it's fair to say that we think he needs to step down and move aside and let fresh Tory blood helm the province. Like he's lost any credibility to put forward any agenda.
The minister of Youth Affairs, Steve Clark, he needs to go as well. They are both absolutely compromised. It is clear beyond reasonable doubt in the from the point of view of public opinion what is going on here, with the blatant appointments to offices like the Police Services Board, with the very choice of friends of there would have been a time when having a friend from a far right party that would have ended your career. Now it's just like, oh yeah, well, he's a fascist, but what are you going to do? He's a close family friend. Good God. This is, we're in, I keep on coming back. I've quoted before, I'm going to quote him again, Rob Burton saying, and I believe it may have been a year or so, couple of years before Doug Ford became Premier, Liberals were still in power, saying Ontario is run by a bunch of Vaughan developers. And, if I don't know if he knew just how true that statement was. Actually, he probably knew exactly how true it was, but it is true. This province is run by and for the development industry, specifically a small number of family-run businesses based in Vaughan primarily. It is messed up. And the nakedness and and remember, it's the same people who are funding Ontario Proud. It's the same people who I've seen these people in action, or seen different development companies in action in Burlington, behaving like thugs, standing at the back of the council rooms with their arms folded in their black suits, kind of in literally threatening kind of body language. They don't sit down with the public because they're far too important for that. They stand lined up at the back of the room like a bunch of bloody gangsters, listening to the council debating their things and just waiting for the day when they can storm out and appeal it to the LPAT or the whatever the hell it's called.
Right.
It's messed up at so many levels. And
it's all come out, and we need to. Yeah. But ultimately, this government has lost the ability, I think it's lost the confidence of the people. I can't say the legislature because they still control it, but you're right. My God, like Doug Ford and Steve Clark have been so compromised by this party and this news of it that where are the calls for their resignation? Where is the calls for them to step aside? And it's like the opposition needs to
Doug Ford became leader of the. Sorry to interrupt you, but
go ahead.
I just want to come back to Marit Stiles, and please, Marit, if you're listening to this, which you're probably not, but if you are, or if any of your staff are, we really want to speak to you, and we want you to put the record straight, and I want you to tell me why what I'm about to say is completely wrong. But the day that Doug Ford became leader of the PCs, he dominated the headlines, and he continued to dominate the headlines every day afterwards until he was damn well elected. And it was the Donald Trump effect. It's this big guy shooting his mouth off on a platform. Okay, it's easier for those guys to get attention. I understand the challenge of trying to be a responsible politician in the current age. You'll get all the headlines you ever want if you're a colossal jerk. However, it's your duty as leader to get in the media constantly. You're the leader of the opposition. You're claiming to be the premier in waiting for God's sake, where are you on this issue? Where the hell are you? What have you been doing all weekend? And you know, the people who the candidates who are putting their names forward for the Ontario Liberals, where the hell are you? You know, this is, again, I've said it already, say it again. This is Christmas come early. This is everything you ever want as an opposition party.
Oh, yeah.
This is an invitation to throw mud for 4 years. Why are you not throwing mud at the time when it's actually on? It's already on the front pages of the newspaper, despite the best efforts of the Star to bury it, possibly. You know, for God's sake, if you're not out there screaming from the rooftops about this, what the hell are you there for? I mean, and it brings us back to the story that has dominated the headlines more than it should have done. I think we can agree on, we disagree on, and we might get into some of the things we disagree about on the second story. But
why don't we move on to the second story? Because I think we're going to beat the Stag and Doe story to death at this point. But the second story that we're going to talk about, of course, is the resignation of John Tory as mayor of Toronto. Now, it's not a 905 story, but you know what happens in Toronto affects the 905. It's a symbiotic relationship, I would argue. But the fact that 3 months, like I'm trying to think of how long has it been since the last municipal election, October, November,
yeah,
not even like a full year. We're like a few months into this current term, and he's resigned. Like Toronto has no mayor, the largest city in Canada, the capital of Ontario, the economic center of this country, has no mayor. That's a pretty scandalous thing. Now, the timing of John Tory's affair story coming out, a lot of people are pointing out is highly suspect to mirror the story of the Stag and Doe. Either it's convenient timing, or it's just, wow, somebody had the idea of, we need to overshadow the Stag and Doe story. I don't think that's going to happen now, because John Tory resigning pretty much kills the sex scandal in the mayor's office story right dead in water. There's nowhere for it to go. Even if new news does come out about that relationship or whatever happened, the fact that John Tory is no longer the mayor of Toronto pretty much kills the interest in it. It goes to like page 11 as opposed to page 1. And if it does show up on page 1, it's clear that there's an editorial motivation in promoting the story, in my opinion. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it does kill it. I mean, I think if there are more shoes to drop, I think you get plenty more headlines out of it, if there's sufficiently salacious details. You know,
maybe. But I
mean, this is the big in about what I'm probably about to say. This is the proviso in everything I say. That if there is a second shoe to drop, all bets are off. But I don't get why he resigned. I don't get it. I don't get why he resigned so quickly. I mean, literally, his predecessor took crack, probably at City Hall. Is it because he's an honourable man? Is it because maybe his family insisted? And in which case, fine, good. But that wasn't really. I thought initially that was kind of the reasoning. There wasn't a reasoning. I mean, his explanation was that his behaviour fell short and it was a serious error of judgment and so on. I mean, I go back to my thinking on this is influenced in part by a guy in Britain in the late 90s who was the foreign minister in the then Labour government. And the previous Conservative government had been beset by sex scandals of various kinds. And the reason why the sex scandals were a noose around that government's neck, the government of John Major, was because he touted this kind of back to basics, family values, conservatism stuff. So when it then turns out that half your ministers are getting up to having a lot of fun at the weekends, let's just put it that way, then you're a hypocrite, and that is newsworthy. And this very senior minister in the Labour government came in after 1 or 2 years they'd been in, not very long. It came out that he was having an affair with a senior staffer in his office. And he refused to resign because he said, well, I never said, no, I'm not the family values guy. I'm not a hypocrite. This is my business. This is my personal decision. It's nothing to do with my job. And actually, as it happened, he went on to divorce his wife and to marry this person. And, he, again, still none of our business, but and it doesn't make the story any different that relationship went on to last for the rest of his life.
Okay, but I think
there's relevance here, I feel, to the fact that private life is still private life, even when you work with someone.
Well, okay, let's start. The facts of Tory's resignation are that he had an affair, something that he wanted to keep secret with a subordinate to directly underneath him in the hierarchy of the mayor's office. I think that in itself, he opened the city of Toronto up to possible litigation down the road by the woman in question, should she choose to do it. It was a poor decision on his part. I agree. Like if he was having an affair with somebody outside of City Hall, is our need to know? No, I'm not going to say that. I don't think. I agree. I don't. Personal lives doesn't matter if it doesn't impact the job. This did. This was with a staffer, and it opened the city up to possible litigation and whatnot. The fact that the news came out, I mean, the Toronto Star has a follow-up story published today on what went on to this resignation, and the fact was, he can't operate. He can't push forward his agenda at City Hall if he's constantly fighting off the story of this affair, because there's questions as well about.
But if you literally come out and said,
but here's
none of your business, go away, then what's the story?
It's not anyone's business, because the woman in question got a job working for MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, which of course owns like every sports team in Toronto. The question is, how did she get the job? And does the mayor's office help intervene? There's also ties that MLSE is looking for city funds to help with BMO Field and whatnot. And there's a question like, what's going on here? The media is not going to let that go. It's going to continue to just spiral, and this woman will be caught into it. And apparently Tory didn't want to damage her reputation any further. So there's all that going on. At the same time, how does Tory push forward his agenda if he's fighting off these allegations? Because you and I both know city council is not a partisan forum. You don't have a party whip to say, no, you vote how I want you to vote, regardless of what's going on outside. He's got to go and build his coalition. Now, you know, you have the strong mayor powers and all that, but even still, at some point, if the council just says, I'm not backing you and I'm going to actively undermine you because they see blood in the water, how does the city operate for the next 4 years if this scandal constantly is trounced up? Could he have stuck around? Maybe. I don't think it would have been a pleasant 4 years for him. And he resigned. Did he do the right thing by resigning? I think, yeah. I think he just saved himself and this woman in question, as well as his family and the city, just a whole headache of problems for the next 4 years by just saying, nope, I'm resigning, kill the story, and walk away.
I ultimately think, I think there's two things. One, we have our priorities all messed up. I mean, a number of people said, someone said, when I was saying on Twitter that I don't get why he resigned over this, someone raised the point, well, what about how he treated the homeless? And it's like, yeah, that was like, I don't think John Tory was a good mayor. I think he was, at best unimpressive, at worst actively bad. I'm not defending his record. I just think it's messed up what people resign for in our culture.
There's that.
If if John Tory's marriage is under strain and having difficulties, all these details have nothing to do with his job. I still don't see now. If the person the other person involved in the relationship had a complaint, then that's relevant and should be pursued in the normal channels. If jobs were got for people, that should absolutely be pursued in the normal channels. But then something's been done wrong, and you're pursuing the thing that's been done wrong. You're not pursuing the potential of something being done wrong. And I don't see in other walks of life where we say you can't do this because potentially that's an issue.
But they do it all.
We
the
wait
time.
for the thing to be done wrong. You know?
Well, no,
I think
companies have policies where you're not allowed to date in.
I know,
you're not allowed to have inter-office romances.
But we don't say you're not allowed to go
reason.
golfing with buddies because that's a conflict of interest. We don't say you can't take people out for business lunches because that's a conflict of interest. Although all those things can be conflicts, all those things can lead to corruption and problems. We don't have rules against those things. So I don't like this development in our culture, which I think is doomed to fail because humans are humans and humans are going to be attracted to who they're attracted to.
You're being attracted to who you're attracted to, but you don't have to act on it. And you don't have to do it. Again, if John Tory pursued an affair outside of on his own time and it wouldn't interfere with his job as mayor, is it questionable? Perhaps. Like, you could question his personal ethics and morality, fair enough. But in terms of his job as mayor, no, I don't think it's worth getting into. The problem, I think, is the fact that this was, ultimately comes down to my mind, she was his employee. There is a huge conflict of interest there. There's a huge ethical no-go area there. It doesn't matter if you have feelings for your employees, you just don't act on them. You make a conscious choice. I am backing out. He opened the city up to such potential litigation. If she says next year, you know what, I've rethought this and the city didn't protect me from the mayor's pressure. Like, we don't know what happened, and maybe it was consensual, maybe not. Maybe she was caught up in the mystique of the mayor's office or whatever, and he exploited her in a time where
if that's the case, then there's a problem. But those are the point I'm making is that's, you go after the problem, not the potential for the problem. We don't know any of that. As far as we know, it's a consensual relationship.
He didn't have to resign. He chose to, which tells me that either he's like, I'm not going to deal with the what could have been. It's politics. The public has a right to know, like, okay, what actually happened here? Did you pressure this woman into a relationship? It's
down to the party, the other party, to make that complaint.
Maybe so. And here's the thing. I don't see him able to get through the next 4 years if this is hanging over his head. I don't see. The question then is, what was said, what was done, what was not done. Were promises made? Were promises kept? And all these questions come out, and he just said he didn't have to resign. He could have said, no, I'm going to force it out. Same as Rob Ford did. He chose not. He chose to resign, so we will never know what the answers to those questions are. I admit it.
I think,
but that's on John Tory. That's on George Tory chose to resign rather than answer those questions.
And John Tory's political career has been a real mess, hasn't it? If you look at his time as leader of the opposition, and the dog's breakfast of an election he ran, it's like he's like Paul Godfrey. He's one of these people who just keep on turning up with no particular track record to suggest they're very good at anything, but looks vaguely personable and wears a nice suit. I don't get it. His career is probably over now.
It is. It's toast. There's no. He's unelectable. He's unelectable, and he's political kryptonite now for anybody who wants to side with it. To bring it back to bring it full circle. his resignation, I think, really screws over Doug Ford now. And that's what I kind of want to bring up, the conspiracy idea that Doug Ford leaked this story to drum away from our first story with the Stag and Doe. I say, if that's true, hypothetically, if it is, the resignation is honestly a great middle finger to him, because it kills the story. There's nowhere to go with it. Like, any news that comes out afterwards, maybe it's newsworthy, maybe it's not, but I think it pretty much kills the story. The focus now goes back to the Stag and Doe party. Who was there? What was said? What was done there? At least that's where I think it should be going.
I still think,
and keep in mind, Doug Ford did bring in like the strong mayor's powers exclusively for John Tory to keep him in his back pocket. With John Tory now gone, who gets those powers? I mean, I'm hearing that the strong mayor's, the Queen's Park is saying the strong mayor's powers were exclusively for John Tory. They weren't like the office of the mayor now has the power, which, yeah, that's sketchy.
You know, this is the kind of logic that comes from a man who talks about the difference between 999% and 1000%. I mean, for God's sake, it's so stupid. You change the law for one person. What kind of democracy are we living in? You know, this is
it's democracy where John Tory could push through an agenda with less than a third support of city council. That's all gone now.
Well, I mean, but they're talking about rolling it out to Hamilton and to Ottawa. Well, it's already been rolled out to Ottawa.
But what happens if the NDP and the Liberals get their shit together and put forward a couple candidates that are progressive, that are really going to, that aren't going to kick out homeless out of parks or shut down homeless warming centers in the city, and maybe push back against development.
God, just some candidates with enough of the gift of the gab with the media to be able to put a sentence together that grabs a bloody headline.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it again, I can't. If I was leader of one of those parties, I would be just lining up to get on every damn media show.
Oh, fuck
to talk about the Stag and Doe story.
Oh, yeah. Again, it comes back like this. This story comes back to Doug Ford, in my opinion. I don't honestly, at this point, I don't care about John Tory. I really don't. I don't care what happens to him. I don't care whatever happens next. I don't care about. It's a mute story because we're going to get a new mayor in Toronto. It comes back to Doug Ford. Right now, Doug Ford has lost a major political ally in the province. He ought to have every politician breathing down his neck about the Stag and Doe story. And what's happening with the Greenbelt and everything else that he's going on. Like, Doug Ford, I would suspect for the next 4 years we're going to see him. We thought the notwithstanding clause bit was the worst that he could do. I suspect Doug Ford is going to find far more worse antics to inflict upon the province of Ontario, because Doug Ford doesn't know how to negotiate. He doesn't know how to politic. He knows how to bully. He knows how to pressure.
And that's
what we're going to see in the next 4 years, because the pressure is going to be on him to say, to tighten that noose, as you said earlier, and he's going to fight back, and you're going to see. My question is: are we going to see far worse than any kind of notwithstanding clause here in the province? Unions like QP, you better be ready to go back to the wall on this one, because I think all the unions are going to be up in arms over the next 4 years. What's going to happen?
You have to remember how Doug Ford was the first 4 years when things weren't going before COVID. Things weren't going well. He got booed in.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Downtown, he was on a stage with Justin Trudeau. He got booed. Justin Trudeau got.
Which when the Raptors won.
Yeah.
Won the championship, and they were coming out shooting around.
Furious, and he reshuffled his cabinet the week after, fired the finance minister. The guy doesn't like it when things get nasty, and he feels he's unpopular. The last year has been easy for them because the opposition has been missing in action. And clearly a decision was made, and politically it's the right decision to while those jackasses don't even have leaders, we push out all of the most unpopular stuff. Mm-hmm. So we then got 2.5 years, 3 years to butter people up with tax breaks before the next election. So, yeah, they've played that the way it should be played. But the fact is, the NDP have a leader now, and we need that leader be doing her job. So, love to hear from her.
Well, let's leave it at that for this episode. Take care, everyone. We'll be back this Thursday with another episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.